All right, welcome back for our final day, day 7 of the How to Become Rich, How to Become Wealthy masterclass that we're doing here. And I'm really excited. Oh, I actually have to flip this chart over. We have it from yesterday. We're going to talk today about a really key concept, which is multiplying ownership. And it's going to help to give you some context of what we've been talking about in general here and show you the logic behind these 6 principles. These 6 principles come from examining, what is universal amongst self-made billionaires, really. How do we narrow down what is universal and essential, okay? Nobody who became a billionaire did it self-made, did it without this, and everybody who didn't do this didn't become a billionaire. So here's the logic. You have to, in order to make money, buy something for less than you sell it for. And that's total costs inclusive. Cost of your time, cost of all that stuff. Okay, that's how you make money. Then what you have to do is you have to be able to scale that. You have to be able to go from one transaction to a lot of transactions, or big transactions, right? Look at Coca-Cola, they sell lots of Coke. They impact a lot of people. In order to be able to do that, you need to be able to leverage a team, okay? You can only know so much yourself. We talk about mastery, but you can only master so much yourself. There's only so much that you can do. You only have so much time. Very frequently, one thing we didn't talk about, but is the leverage that comes from tapping into other people's networks, other people's reputations, other people's resources, other people's money, etc. But you can do all of those things and not become rich. You can do them really, really well. How is that? How does that work? How could you possibly, instead of making $1, you make $1 billion? Instead of, and you get yourself a great team, etc. How could you do all of that and not become super rich? And the answer really lies in looking at the story of Steve Jobs. I like to use billionaires as examples, and on the website we'll go through and we'll have case studies for you showing how all these different billionaires applied literally this formula of these 6 pieces. Steve Jobs, when he died, was worth something like $9 billion. I don't remember exactly, but say that's the number. He had just finished doing the most impressive corporate turnaround in history. He had taken Apple from the point of bankruptcy, worth less than $10 billion, to being the most valuable company in the world in about 12 years. Very, very impressive. Massive success story. Interestingly, when he died, the vast majority of his wealth, only a small percentage, about maybe $1 billion to $2 billion, was in Apple. Even though he had just grown Apple's value, done this massive wealth creation. The majority of his wealth was in Disney stock from Pixar. And Disney had sold for like $7 billion, $9 billion, something. I think it was $7 billion. Kind of a disparity. What's the difference? Steve owned 80% of Pixar when it got bought, and he owned only a tiny fraction of Apple when it grew. So you need to have ownership of what it is you're doing. And ownership, you'll see a lot of people who, it's really important to focus on profit. Profit is a big, big deal in a company. Profit's the amount of money you keep after your expenses. But you really get to multiply the value of profit through ownership. And this is really a big difference between a job and a company. And this is one of the many reasons why having a business is better than every other vehicle. Let's imagine that you have a job where you make $100,000, or better yet, you increase your income by $50,000 or $100,000 a year. Let's say it's $100,000 a year. How much money have you made? You made $100,000. Say you do that same thing in a business. How much money have you made? Well, you've made that $100,000, yes, but you've also grown the value of the business. A business is typically, it really depends on the industry and the size and various things, but loosely speaking, we'll say that a company is worth 3 to 5 times its earnings. So if you just grew its earnings by $100,000, earnings is profit, you just grew the value of the company by $300,000 to $500,000. So you grew your net worth. It's quite interesting. The founder of Waste Management, who was also the founder of Best Buy, basically grew his company in a large sense this way. What he'd done was he built a successful model with a waste disposal company, and in the case of Blockbuster, a video store. Then what he did was he started acquiring others, okay? And what happens is the faster a company is growing and the larger a company is, typically the better multiple you can get. Multiple is the amount of money it makes per year multiplied equals how much the company is worth. So let's say that the company was worth 20 times, okay? So the company is making $1 million and it's worth 20 times. It's actually a $20 million company. So it would take him 20 years in order to add up to that. In fact, more because of taxes. And he's already got that net worth, which is why you see all these Silicon Valley billionaires who the companies haven't made a lot of money, but the multiple has made them very wealthy. Now, what he would do is he would go and he would acquire these small companies. And these companies he could acquire at, say, a 3 times multiple. Okay? So let's say a company was making $100,000 a year. They're not growing much, so they have a small multiple. So he buys them up for $300,000. But that just increased the profit of his company by $100,000. But his multiple is 20 times. So 20 times 100,000 isn't 300,000, it's 2 million. So we got to pay $300,000 for $2 million worth of value. And he was literally, I think it was every 7 hours they were doing an acquisition at their peak in Best Buy. That's how quickly they were growing. And he's a very, very impressive success story in terms of growing companies, but it's really, really critical to understand. Now, before we dive into this, because just owning things is not the key, although I will say this from the outset. One of the biggest distinctions that people miss is people think that becoming wealthy is about what you do or what you make. It's not. It's about what you own. What you own is what makes you wealthy. If you own a lot of assets that pay you money on and on and on and on and have a lot of value to them, sustainable, that's wealth. If you do something, that's just having an income. It could go away tomorrow. Very, very important distinction. So your goal needs to be to build ownership of assets, productive assets. And we'll talk in a minute about what that is and the distinctions and how you can use that to multiply value really, really quickly. But before then, I want to talk about this sequence because we've gone through our various different steps here. And there's kind of a natural application sequence to what you're going to do. First of all, if you just think logically, if you were just starting out, what do you have? You have nothing. And so what's the first thing you have to do? You have to increase your income, okay? And as you increase your income, you're going to be able to start having a situation where you can reduce your spending, okay? So you can create a differential. So you have to get your spending down so that you're keeping more. It's not what you make, it's what you keep that counts. And so you first work on boosting your income, and then you start to put some of your effort. Typically it's like a 90-10 rule. So you put 90% of your effort into increasing your income, 10% into decreasing your expenses, and that's going to start to accumulate, okay? When that income accumulates to a certain point, now you're going to start paying attention. It's like a little teeter-totter. And so the teeter-totter is up here, which means this is where you pay attention to. That's the income side. But as the income increases, it weighs this down, and we start to see this other side come up. And on this other side, we have, first of all, investing. Okay? So investing starts to come up, and that's where one of the ways that we create this multiplication of ownership is compound interest, compound growth. It's nice to be able to say, okay, that's what I want to do from the beginning, but you can't do that until you have money to invest. And you're typically not going to get the same return, which is why you're focusing up to a certain point on income versus investing. So a lot of people get into investing too early. They'll say, okay, I'm going to go and learn how to do day trading and invest my money. Here's the problem. Here, let me just give you an example. Let's say you have $20,000 to invest. If you got a 100% rate of return, you just made $20,000. And you got to work really, really hard and take on a lot of risk typically in order to get a 100% rate of return in a year. Very, very tough to do, at least on a consistent basis. Now, by contrast, if you put that same amount of time into your income, how much could you get? Probably $100,000, $200,000. Like what you should generally be able to find is when you're getting started, you should be able to double your income in, say, the first year, and then double it again, and double it. And you should be able to double it for a few times if you keep doing this. At some point, that's going to break down, and your growth rate will probably decrease. But when you're getting started, it's pretty easy to double your income. That's going to be so you're much better off to put your time here. But as your wealth increases a lot, you've got more and more sitting here. So at some point, you have, say, $10 million sitting, and you're making, let's say, I don't know, $1 million a year or something. Well, now, if you get a 20% rate of return, that's $2 million, which is greater than you can make over here. So you're going to put your energy in this pot. Does that make sense? Do you follow that? Now, what we're typically going to want to do in order to do this smart, this is kind of the teeter-totter of wealth building I talk about, is you want to start when you're making this money by paying off any consumer debt, which we define as debt over 7%. The reason for that is because this is risk-free return. It makes you more nimble. It gives you access to money in case something goes wrong. And you're not too likely to do better than 7% earlier on. So you might, but not on a consistent basis for most people. Kind of the stock market will average somewhere around that. Bonds right now are very low, so you're going to get way less than that. So generally speaking, if you're paying more than 7% on debt, which means it doesn't include your mortgage at this stage in time, you want to pay that down. Okay? Now, once you've paid that down, now you want to build up a reserve fund. And the reserve fund should be 3 to 6 months, typically more than 6 months, and you're usually kind of wasting money. But you want to get yourself some sort of a cushion. And then at that point, you're going to start focusing on the investing. And you're not going to worry about actively investing it. You're just going to put it somewhere where it can sit in a tax-sheltered basis. And that's a whole conversation that, again, in the action classes we can cover with you individually based on your situation, or you can just log into the website and get some information directly from there. Now, so that after you've got investing starting to build up, the last piece is preservation. This is things like asset protection, estate planning, passing it on, succession planning, things like that. So that's kind of your flow. And by the time we get to this assets place, although assets do help a lot in building income and in decreasing expenses, because you get to pay for something once that you can use over and over and over and over again, it really also comes into play very, very heavily in learning investing. So I've kind of given you the context of how this works. Now let's talk a little bit about what is a productive asset. So first of all, an asset is something that its value does not go down. It doesn't. So as an example, if I build a system, that has a value. If I create a database, that has a value. And it's like, once I've built it, I don't have to build it again. Does that make sense? And then productive means that, at least if I leverage it, but if I apply energy to it, it's going to produce a return for me. So by having that database, I can work the database, and I don't have to get the database a second time. Whereas, if I make a call, now I have to make a call again and again and again. If I spend $1 to get, internet connection or a phone connection, I have to do it again tomorrow and again tomorrow and again tomorrow. So your ideal, the highest value things that you can do in your business, and this goes back to our day 5, where we were talking about our lesson 4, which is on scale. How do you scale? What are some high impact activities you can do? It's things where you do it once and it has a repeat long-term value. So this might be building a training system. It might be building a system in general. It might be getting a database built. And so the idea is that an optimal business builds assets and then finds ways to leverage them against each other. And this leverage against each other is a really important component. This is something that Apple did so much better than Google. I'm going to give you an example of this. All right. Apple built iOS. All right. So they built it first on the iPod and iPhone, really. Now they came along and they created the iPad. Now at that stage, it would have been logical. It's a different form factor. It has kind of a different way of interacting with it. Might want to create a new operating system, right? But they didn't. They took iOS and they put it on here. And what did they do? They took this asset that they had, iOS, and they made it more valuable by applying it to more users and more situations. Does that make sense? By contrast, let's look at Google. Google's really bad at this. Google will throw out individual projects and not really nurture them with the overall company and have them burn out very frequently. A good example is Google Wave. I was really excited about Google Wave when it first was announced. It was designed to be like the next generation of email. You could do live interacting with the person. It would translate to different languages. There was all sorts of really fancy technology with it. But what they did was when they launched it, you had to get an @Google Wave email address. I wasn't going to give anybody else my email, a new email address. They already have my existing email address. Am I going to email everyone and say, hey, send me messages to @googlewave.com? No, I'm not going to do that. It's too much of a pain. And so, as a result, a bunch of reasons, but that project ended up failing. Now let's imagine if Google had leveraged an existing asset they had, which is Gmail, to make this other asset successful. Let's say that they had said, hey, tomorrow when you wake up, everyone who has Gmail is now a Google Wave user. And if you send an email to somebody who has Gmail, automatically you're sending a wave and you'll interact in this new way. If somebody doesn't have a wave, then it'll just go as a normal email. Pretty cool. What would you have instantly had? A massive user base of people who were using this product and seeing the value of it. But they didn't do that. And as a result, and there's just a ton of examples like that. Here's another one. Google really didn't leverage Google Talk on Android. I mean, Google Talk should have been BBM, really. But they didn't do that. Now they have Hangouts, and even that, like, Hangouts doesn't have search in it. I don't know how that can possibly be. So as at the time this video is being created. I mean, it's a search company, it's their main thing. They don't have it in there. There's just lots of little examples of this where they don't take one technology and use it to boost the value of another. They do things independently. You don't want to do that in your business. The way you want to grow is you want to find things that you've got and find ways you can make them valuable in another way. Does that make sense? You want to build assets that are going to make others valuable. I'll give you an example in my recruiting company. We had a database of candidates, okay? This is like basically a list of resumes and notes that we'd taken on these people. Now, if I have one client, then that database is worth a certain amount because I can only place so many people with that one client. If I have 10 clients, all of a sudden each of those names is worth more, or each of those contacts is worth more, because there's a better chance of placing them. And it goes both ways. As I add one, it increases the value that I have here because I'm more likely to be able to make a placement. And as I add a company, I'm more likely to be able to make a hire. And so this was a good example of being able to put these against each other. Having a good sales system in place. A bunch of different examples of this type of thing. If I created a software that I could use, the more volume I could throw at that software, the more valuable the software became, even though it was the same software that I just had to pay for once. So that's the idea of productive assets and leveraging assets against each other. Is if you can own assets, be it real estate, be it a business that's solid, that's got this recurring, if your business can build things that it doesn't have to do again, that's going to free up time. It's going to cost you less because you don't have to repay for those things over and over again. And it's going to add value. These are the types of things that are going to add value to your company that you can sell. So it's really the most essential point, but you got to own it, right? You have to own it. And when you're getting into negotiations, early on, you're busy learning. It's not such a big deal. But as you grow, you really want to pay attention to, instead of just making money, what are you building that you can own? What is it that you're building that you can sell? Because ultimately, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you don't have a retirement plan typically. Your retirement plan is being able to sell that company. And a lot of people are in a position where they can't sell the company for much because they haven't designed it this way. And so that's like the heart of it. That is so, so key. This is something that has been applied over and over and over again, these 6 principles. And these 6 principles are something that really, if you apply them, you can just take a look. You can say, hey, here's my friend. How well they're doing. Oh, okay, they're doing this well. All right, what are they probably doing well? They're probably doing marketing well, and they probably have good mastery. Maybe they're doing okay on low spending. Now, what about, how are they doing on delegation? Oh, they suck at delegation. Okay, so that's going to knock them down on what their income level is. How are they doing on ownership and multiplying ownership, building assets and leveraging assets? Not very well. Okay, that's going to knock them down. You can literally go through and see people who you know, see yourself, and say, okay, where am I weak? Let's correct this. And I kind of recommend the sequence that we talked about. Technically, the starting point should be, like I said, marketing, because you have to find something that's valuable that you can sell. But in order to do that, you have to be able to buy it less than it's worth, which means you need to do that predictably, as well as to sell predictably. Expertise helps. So the foundation is starting that expertise, trading your time for expertise and connections, finding ways of getting something for less than it's worth, or for less than people are willing to pay for it, and then practicing that selling, getting that process consistent. Now focusing on scaling. That's going to be, how do you duplicate what it is you do? You're going to systemize it. You're going to leverage the person through some automation, things like that. Then you're going to delegate off. You're going to have to bring on a team. And there's, again, go to the website and look at details on that. And then make sure you own it. And as you're doing this, you want not only ideally for you to be building these assets, but for your employees to be building assets. They're increasing the value as you go along. And it's going to create a ton of freedom for you. It's going to create a ton of opportunity. And no matter what business you're in, this is going to apply to you. Now, if, as you probably do, as I said, rhythm creates results, you're going to be in this situation where you're saying, okay, this is great. This is wonderful stuff. Sounds great in principle. But how do I apply it? And, I try to give you as much as I can here, but the reality is, as I've said along the way, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. You're going to have to go in and you're going to have to take a step, and then you're going to have to get some feedback. And being able to correct along the way, what's that time worth? The time is probably worth, like I said, $100 to $500 a day. Just if it pushes you back a day, that's the cost, right? And so I really encourage you to join our action classes. Our action classes are designed to address that for you. It's super affordable. It's set up to be, as affordable as I can possibly make it for you without compromising the value that I can deliver. So obviously we have to put a bunch of energy into it and we need to get a return on that. And so it's built around that, but designed to be very, very accessible. The community is super powerful. Being able to go out to the community and saying, hey, I'm in this area, I'd like to reduce my cost on a mechanic. Does somebody have, a way to save money on there? Boom, you can get an instant savings. Hey, you guys, I'm interested in buying a vehicle. Does anybody have similar? Boom, you can create savings. Looking for customers. Oftentimes, you're, a designer or something like this, and you can always then pick up people within the community. Instant return. Those are that's just without starting to get into the actual curriculum in terms of the actual feedback and to grow your company, in terms of all those different details. Just huge, huge, huge possibilities. So one of the things that I love about people like you is, as you say, we're action takers, right? We're here, we've showed up. We're looking to make a change, and we're willing to do something to do that. So I really encourage you. It should be on your screen if you're on the website. You can go and you can sign up for that. You can participate with us. You can cancel at any time if you decide it's not worthwhile for you. But I don't think you'll find that. It's very, very, we put a lot of effort into making it as high value as possible. We're always working with feedback to try and make it better. It's been really, really good to spend this time with you. I hope that you got a lot of value. If you have feedback, I would love to hear from you. I would love for you to go to the website, send us an email, say, hey, here's what I learned, here's what I would have loved to see, here's what's better. We have a ton of resources, so keep going back to that website. It's designed, this website is not designed, Richucation is not designed to be like any other service out there. It's designed to be like a reference resource that you can go back to anytime you have a question. You're like, hey, I need to get into real estate investing. How do I do that? Richucation. I need to go and market a new product. Richucation. I've gone through marketing lots of different companies. I've gone through these different details. We've dissected from hundreds of different other companies and business owners and entrepreneurs and wealthy people and investors. What are the key secrets, and put them down so you don't have to go and read 100 books. I would go and look at my library, and there's books and books and books and books. And just knowing how to filter that out. At the time when I got started, I read some great books that were really, really fantastic, but I didn't know where they were in the sequence. And so we lay out the sequence for you. Okay, do this first, then this, then this, then this. And here's a video on how to do that, and here's some guidelines. And if you want some help, you can contact us and deal with it. It's just, what is that worth? It's for somebody who can take their time and can boost their value. It was one of the things that Elon Musk said that I really appreciated, was he looked at when they were building SpaceX, he said, look, 5 years from now, we're going to be doing $10 million a day in revenue, so $3.6 billion a year. Every day that we delay is costing us $10 million in revenue. So what's that cost? That's phenomenally high. And so go take some action. Rhythm creates results. Engage in some rhythm. Engage, 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 engage. It's really, really possible for you to make a massive difference. We started at the beginning. We said, okay, here's where you are, here's where you want to go to. And you're not going to get there based on your current trajectory. So you got to tweak it. And just like the plane that's flying from LA to Hawaii, you got to tweak along the way. You're going to be off course most of the time. But the faster you can correct, the less it's going to cost, the easier it's going to be. And that's why we've created these programs. Really hope you'll join us. Really interested to hear from you. Go down to the bottom of the page, sign up, even if just to try it out, even just to go in there and see what it's like, engage with us. One of the things that I try to do as much as possible is set up calls so we get to know everybody involved, and so you get some one-on-one attention right off the bat and start to make some connections for you, and those are invaluable. But regardless, whether you're figuring out how to start a company or how to make extra income on the side or how to invest or how to grow an existing company or how to do something taxes, we didn't even talk about taxes, but there's 3 ways to reduce taxes and save money at there, which would be extraordinarily huge for some people. People pay a lot of money to us in order to be able to do that. So definitely go sign up now. Take the chance. You'll be very happy. There's a 100% money back guarantee, so you don't risk anything. You just go and you make it happen. Go get some action done. Apply some rhythm. Get some results. Thank you.